All right, if you're watching on YouTube, we're getting set up here. We're also here on Zoom, and I'm putting the Zoom link in the chat. So join us over here on Zoom. Love to meet you. I'll hang out for a few minutes when the episode's over and talk with anybody who's going to join us here live on Zoom. Okay. All right, welcome back to Increased, episode 53. I'm Blake Anderson. Honored to be here with you. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you happen to be listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow us. A new episode drops every Tuesday. So we're going to keep moving along with some of the leadership themes that we've started this year. And it's my contention, as you've heard me say, that if you're wanting more in your future, more money, a promotion, more influence, then it is going to come as a result of your increased leadership. And so if you haven't listened or watched episode 52, go back last week and check it out. And we talked about how important leadership is and how it will lead to a promotion in your life. And we described how there's three qualities of a leader that your followers are going to be looking for. The first being that you're authentic, second being you're compassionate, and the third is that you take ownership and you get results, that you lead your team to victory. And so, if you're going to be a leader who takes ownership of the results, you're going to take ownership of the process and of the team, then you're going to be the one that's going to be making some important decisions. People are going to be coming to you, whether it's your leaders, your clients, your bosses, and they're going to put you on the hook for some important decisions. Let me ask you, have you ever made a decision that didn't turn out the way you planned? Surely you're not like me. Things didn't go I'm sure they go well for you every time you make a decision. Well, you step into leadership, you make enough decisions, and something is bound to go wrong. And what I got out of this really great book, The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham, very different business book. And this book is about thinking and it's about making decisions. And what Keith says is that bad decisions are the result of unchecked assumptions. And so today I want to get into decisions and the problem with unchecked assumptions and how it affects you as a leader and affects your results in anything that you do. And I believe that the Bible speaks very clearly about how to make great decisions. Now, if you've ever read the Bible, you know you're not going to get into the contents and look under and find a chapter that says decision making. You're not going to find one that says money or wisdom or success. But if you're a student of the Bible, when you seek after the wisdom, you will find it, and it is in there. And I believe that there's a four-step process that the Bible lays out to making good decisions. And hopefully, if you could follow these four steps, then you won't fall victim of bad decisions and you won't be the victim of unchecked assumptions. So I want to jump right into these four steps to really empower you to make great decisions. You see, no one ever intends to make a bad decision. And no one ever goes into a decision thinking about their unchecked assumptions. Maybe the things that they're assuming that turn out not to be correct. And it's really not until you get the results you're not looking for that you're confronted, if you're willing to look for them, with the unchecked assumptions. Normally it comes with that real sting. Oh, I should have known better. Why didn't I check? Well, I think this four-step process the Bible is going to give us will help you not fall victim of unchecked assumptions and be able to make strong decisions so that you can be the leader that the promotion that you're looking for needs you to become. So, step number one in making effective decisions is count the cost. Count the cost. Jesus taught us in Luke 14 Verses 28 through 30, he says, "For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth down first and sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest happily after he had laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish." He's I'm a builder, a real estate developer by trade. And that's a really important part of what we do. Before we build things, we've got to count the cost. But even those of us who've been trained how to estimate and count the cost, we still get it wrong. And where do we get it wrong? Well, we realize, unfortunately, after the fact, we have unchecked assumptions. And so to check those assumptions, to make a strong decision, the first thing you've got to do, you've got to count the cost. Whether you're building a building, whether you're building a team, launching a new product, or making a hiring decision, you're going to have to count the cost. And you can't skip this process. And so I'm taking time preparing for today's episode, reflecting through some of the poor decisions I've made, many of the books that I've read, and some of the sage wisdom I've got from mentors along the way. We count the cost. After you've done your mental math, you've ran your numbers, you still need to ask yourself some questions. And the first being, what am I missing? You need to as Keith Cunningham lays out in his book, The Road Less Stupid, you need to find the unasked question. What wasn't asked in the process? You need to separate the problems from the symptoms. Because oftentimes we get everything all mixed up and we go chasing symptoms and never solve the problem. And you just keep playing whack-a-mole with symptoms, yet continue to have the same unchecked assumption leading to the same results that you don't want. And third, you got to check your assumptions. What am I assuming that I don't have actual data for? What am I assuming to be true based on past experience that maybe I need to go back and check again? You'd be amazed that even us professional builders and developers still do way too much building and spending money on unchecked assumptions. And so the better we get, go to another level of leadership or building or development, we've got to learn to check assumptions. So you're asking yourself the question, what am I missing? What still needs to be considered? A second sage piece of advice I got from another real estate developer is he said, you need to be willing to spend a little bit of money to avoid losing a lot of money. Now, let me say that again. He told me, you need to be willing to spend a little bit of money on the front end to save yourself from losing a lot of money on the back end. You know, most of the time we're running our mental math and it's a decision whether we're going to make an investment or we're going to pursue something or launch a new product or make a hire. And we don't really want to spend any extra time or extra money because we need what we want what we want now. You know, maybe you want to make that hire, but you don't want to take the time it takes to check all the references. You know, maybe you want to hire the next vendor or buy the next software, but you don't want to take the time to read the reviews. You know, I'll be willing to say transparently, as a real estate developer, I've learned some of my most intense, hardest lessons by buying a piece of property on an assumption that I could build something on it that it turns out I couldn't. And once we bought it, closed on it, realized we couldn't, it was too late. I couldn't get my money back. Now we had to completely different strategy. Had we been willing to spend a little bit more money on the front end, we could have avoided the loss of a lot of money on the back end. So count the cost. Count the cost. Some decisions, you can count the cost very quickly. Some of your large decisions is going to take more time. But the point is, you are making decisions with unchecked assumptions. And one of the ways that you can find what you're missing is you start by counting the cost. The second thing the Bible tells us to do is the Bible says that without counsel, plans fail. You see, Proverbs 15:22 says, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. So we need to seek out counsel. We need to find advisors in our life. We need to ask other people for help. You need to ask the other people for help. Find a mentor. Is there someone who's already done what you're trying to do? Can you ask them? Can you take them out for lunch, buy them coffee and say, hey, tell me how that went. What advice would you give me starting out? Were you successful or failed? What were the failures? What am I missing? What assumptions have I not considered? Seek out counsel. Learn from the mistakes of others. That's the great thing about finding someone who's done it already is most people want to help. And one of the first things that they'll tell you is, hey, I made this mistake. And you can avoid the mistake I want, because most of the time we learn those important lessons, they sting. And we want to help other people, and we don't want them to have to learn the mistake that we did. John C. Maxwell says in life, you can lose or you can learn. Well, many of these mentors that went ahead of us have already learned, and they'll prevent us from losing if we will seek out their counsel. And when you seek out counsel, be willing to listen to people who tell you something that you don't want to hear. You see, we all need contrarians in our life. We need the people who are going to come and put a hole in our bubble, who are going to poke the holes in our strategy, who are going to find the assumptions in our math, who are going to point out where we're missing. And sometimes that hurts, because sometimes they're going to tell you all your time and the effort won't work. And they're going to tell you why you'll fail if you go forward. But sometimes that's exactly what you need to hear. I had spent weeks crafting a business model on a new product launch. And I had met with people and I had talked about it, and I'd created a business model, and I'd been given an idea by someone that I thought knew, had some really good advice about a product that was missing in the marketplace. And so I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to create a business model for it. And I met with another entrepreneur friend of mine, and I said, hey, you've been a great friend, great counselor to me in past businesses and product launches. Let me put this before you. And I really thought that he would be all on board, because he was in a related business and it had the potential to bring him more business. I thought in my mind, he wasn't excited at all about my product launch. He poked so many holes in it. I sat deflated in the back of my seat. But I went home and I looked at his advice, and in the reality, he was right. The other person had given me advice that would help them, but his advice hadn't thought about whether it would be profitable in the marketplace. And this friend of mine, this counselor who burst my bubble, probably saved me a whole lot of headache, a whole lot of loss and lost time. So you got to count the costs. You got to seek out counsel, because without counsel, your plans can fail. But it's the counsel from the people who've been where you're trying to get to that will help check your assumptions and fill in the gaps of your formula. Third thing that you need to do to check your assumptions, so you're not making bad decisions, so that you're someone who's making great decisions, that you need to get understanding. Proverbs 4, verse 7 says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. Now, as great as wisdom is, and if you're listening to this podcast, then you're looking for wisdom. And we talk a lot about the importance of wisdom and making ourselves better. But I'm talking about understanding. More so than just wisdom, I'm saying understanding. To make a great decision, you need to understand the problem that you're dealing with. It's amazing how many of our unchecked assumptions is our lack of understanding. That's really where we're going to find most of them, is the fact that we don't really understand the problem. We haven't asked enough questions. We haven't humbly listened to the people on our team, to the mentors in our life. And we went ahead solving a problem that probably didn't exist because we didn't understand it. So a few things to think about here when you're getting understanding to make a great decision is, I was told by a mentor, and you'll hear this throughout the investing world, only invest in things you understand. See, not every problem is yours to solve. Not every investment is a great place for you to put money. What's working for somebody else may not work for you. Make sure that you understand what you're doing first before you move forward. Most of the time, we're looking at someone else's success, and out of jealousy, we're hoping to accomplish what they had, but not being honest, the fact that they brought a lot of skill and understanding and wisdom and experience to the table that helped them get those results. And if you don't have the understanding they had, then their success will be your failure. Okay? Second thing, Albert Einstein quote. Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. You see, we're off getting understanding, and we're looking at really complicated things, complex scenarios. There's lots of data to the things that we're making decisions on. There's lots of moving pieces. But just because you can wrap your head around the moving pieces doesn't mean that you understand it. I had a call this morning from a guy on my team who's out making connections and trying to make some sales for organization, and he was getting lost in all the product offers. And he's like, I'm getting a little confused because we're offering this and we're offering that and we're offering this, and I don't even really know how to present it. Is he's trying to sell something that he doesn't fully understand. And so I was able to make it simple. I was like, hey, let's make it simple, right? What can we do? Instead of getting all confused about our internal process, when you're meeting with a prospect, ask them how you can help. Make it real simple. What are their needs? Don't try to force them into a product that you want to sell. Find out whether you've got a good fit for them. Make it simple. And when it's simple and you start to understand their needs, then your process you'll know how to help them. So, can you explain your issue to a 6-year-old? And if you can't, then you need to spend more time trying to understand the problem you're trying to solve, the product you're trying to offer, the team you're trying to lead. And it's through that process of trying to figure out how you can explain it to a 6-year-old that you begin to get mastery, confidence, and control over the solution or situation. And then another piece of advice as you're trying to get understanding is start by trying to get conceptual understanding of the situation and then ask for details. See, as a leader, you're going to have people bringing you a situation and they are going to be jumping right to their problem, their issue, and the details and getting into the weeds. But for you to be able to make a good decision, especially for your team, my suggestion is start by trying to understand conceptually before they overwhelm you with the details. Before you get into granular detail, understand the landscape of what you're dealing with. Tell them to hold on a second. Let me make sure I get the process here, and then let's fill in the details. The same could be if someone's trying to pitch you an investment or a business or an opportunity. Before you get too far into the weeds, have them explain it to you in a way that you can understand the concepts. And then when you understand it, you're ready to absorb the details. But if you jump right into the details, you might run right past the framework and the concepts for the thing that you're looking at and making a decision on. Hope that understands. And then if you don't understand it, don't move forward. Okay? No matter how much detail they give you, no matter how much the math seems to work, no matter how confident the person on your team is, don't move forward until you have confidence that you understand it. Maybe it needs another meeting. Maybe it needs another call. Maybe someone needs to write it a different way. Maybe you need to whiteboard it out, right? But confidence and understanding is so important for good decisions and for success. Now, I'm not advocating that you continue to punt and procrastinate. I'm just saying you want to have full understanding, because when you make a decision from a place of confidence and competence, most of the time it goes really well. And you have so much better luck than when there's blind trust of the whole situation and all of your team. Now, I hope as a leader, you're surrounding yourself with experts who are much more experienced and have greater levels of expertise than you do at some of the important things your team will do. And you're going to need to trust them. And you're going to have faith in their ability to fulfill the task. But you still, as a leader, when you make a decision, you need to be confident. And so get them to explain it to you over and over and over again until you're confident. And then step into it. And that brings us to the fourth and final step, which you have to have faith. You have to have faith. You're not going to have 100% of the information before you make a decision. And if you try to get it all first, then it'll be too late. The deal would have walked off. The client or the customer or the prospect will have left the negotiating table. It'll be too late. You'll never get it all. So I'm not saying that you should wait forever, but I'm saying a part of your process, in the end, you must know that you're going to just have to have faith. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. Eventually, you're just going to have to trust God. Now, he has a part. We have a part. Proverbs 16:9 says, a man's heart divides his ways, but it's the Lord who directed his steps. See, ultimately, God's going to direct your steps. But your job is in your heart. You have to have devised your way. You got to know where you're wanting to get to. And you prepare yourself to have that, to make a step of confidence, to have faith in what comes next by counting the cost, by seeking out counsel, by getting understanding. And trust me, if you do those three things, you're not going to have 100% of the information, but you're going to feel confident about what the right decision is. And you're going to be able to step into that decision with faith. So you're going to have to trust the process. You're going to have to trust your preparation. And you're going to have to trust your instinct. And ultimately, what I'm saying is you're going to have to trust God. Now, if you're watching this episode, you've been watching Increase for very long, you know that we approach our success through a lens of the Bible. We're seeking after God's word on how to live a successful life. We believe that God wants to bring increase into our life, that he wants our life to lead to more and more and more, that he wants to bless us to be a blessing to others. So we're looking at best practices from a leadership standpoint, from a business perspective. But ultimately, we're people of faith that trust that God is ordering our steps, that he's the one that had good things for us, that he's got plans that will lead to our good. And so the highest level of decision making knows how to recognize what God's up to. You as a leader, you need to bring God in to your business, into your teams. You need to trust that the Holy Spirit is leading you. You need to know what your part is, and then you ultimately have to look to see what God is doing. So we've already described what your part is. Your part as the leader, when you're working with God on decisions, when he's directing your path, you need to count the cost. You can't be ignorant. You need to seek counsel so that you're learning from people who've gone before you. You need to take the time to get understanding. But then you got to have faith. And what I'm saying is then you got to see what God is up to. So let me ask you, do you know what he's up to in your decisions? Do you know how to recognize when he's at work? Can you spot his fingerprints on the doors of opportunity that you're searching for in your life? So ultimately, I'm looking for his fingerprints. I'm looking for his hand, his fingerprints just on the edge of the door that's about to open. And I'm looking to see what is he up to. Now, it's easier for me to step confidently into the steps that he plans for me when I've done the first three steps. But ultimately, sometimes you just have to trust. And so part of my decision making is I watch to see what God is up to, because I believe that if I'm following his plan for me, that he's already ahead of me. And it's been my experience that he is. I don't have to force things to happen, but I also can't be afraid to take a step, even if I don't know where it will take me. You know, Gideon put out a fleece. I don't believe that it's unbiblical to ask for a sign. Jesus said that you'll believe him for the work's sake. I think it's a fallacy right now today in Christendom to say that we as believers shouldn't ask God for a sign. And people say, well, don't test God. No, I believe it's because by our faith, we ask for a sign. Because I believe that God is with me, that he's leading me, that he wants to take me to greater places, that I can ask for him for a sign and he will get involved in my physical reality. Just like Gideon. Gideon said he's being asked to do a task that he didn't feel like he was prepared for, that he was underqualified for. But an angel visited him and said, well, here's the deal. How do I know that you're really leading me? I'm going to put a jacket on the ground out there. And tomorrow it will be dry while the ground is wet. And that's how I'll know it's God, because I know only God can do that. And the next day it was so. But he still didn't believe. So, okay, let's try this again. Maybe God, this wasn't God. I'm going to put the jacket back out there tomorrow again. Except for this time, the jacket will be wet and the ground will be dry. And guess what? It happened. But you can do the same thing in your life. Some of the biggest decisions that I've made in my life, I've confidently made them because I had a fleece on the ground asking for God to move in my life. You know, God will come to you and present an opportunity or a path that will challenge your faith. When He's trying to take you to somewhere great, He's going to lead you out of your comfort zone. And it's going to feel uncomfortable, and it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be fearful. But when He's done that with me, I've asked Him for signs, and He has been so good to follow up. I remember years ago, we were flat broke. And I believed at the time that God was asking me to quit a job, the way that I was providing for my family. And I felt really strong that that was what I was supposed to do, but I still was afraid. And I knew I needed to have faith, but I wasn't ready. And I said, God, I need a sign. I need some unexpected money to show up so that I know that when I quit this job that's paying, that you have other ways to pay for me. And so it was the beginning of September, and we went on vacation. And we came back, and on September 21st, 9/21, I had a check from my insurance company for $921. Now, who can do that but God? You see, over the summer, I was sent a bill from my insurance company. They told me I owed them $1,200. And I got back, I didn't owe them $1,200. They were paying me $900. I quit the job, as hard as it was, and it led to my gut. You could put a fleece on the ground, but I'm going to tell you what. When God gives you that sign, you need to have the courage to follow Him. But the courage is easier to come by when you have the confidence, because you know how to make strong decisions. So I pray that 2024 will be one of the best years yet, that you'll make some of the best decisions that lead to good that you've never experienced before. And I pray that you'll start eliminating all the unchecked assumptions that plague our decision making, that lead to unexpected results and the kind that we don't want. And yet you'll do that by first counting the cost. Then you'll look for counsel, people who've been where you're going. That you'll follow that up by getting understanding, doing the study, and making sure that you understand the problem and the decision that you're about to make. And then finally, that you have faith, that when God orders your steps, you can step into it, you can take it, and you can go to the places you've never been. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Increase. All right, if you are on YouTube, we're going to cut the feed. Join us over here on Zoom. You can find a link in the chat. If you are on Zoom, hang with me for a second while I get this set up.